Hiya, it's TAW Unwrapped. I'm Josh Sexton. This episode is titled as Florian Wirtz's start to life at Liverpool, and joining me to discuss that are Neil Atkinson, Kieran, Molyneux and McKenna. I want to look at this because there's been a bit of discourse over the weekend, a lot of discourse, to be honest, off the back of the defeat to Crystal Palace, Neil. But we want to look at Florian Wirtz in particular as Liverpool's star man or star signing from the summer until Alexander Isak came in. There's definitely a bit of a couple of strands we can look at it to this. So I want to start with the eye test first and foremost. We've all seen him play in the flesh by now. I first saw him in pre-season and was very impressed by his movement. To be honest, that was the thing that stood out to me originally. He's got a real footballer's arse, is how I'd describe it. Like he's good in those sort of physical battles. His touch in tight space, his ability to hold on to the ball because of that sort of physical frame of his. And I'm not yet seeing any other sort of technical point that jumps out to me from those original bits. But then, you look at it against Crystal Palace at the weekend against Everton. He's playing off the left-hand side and is probably a bit non-impactful. You'd say as much as poor by any stretch of the imagination. But have we all too quickly forgotten second halves against Arsenal and how he was against Atletico Madrid, for example?
I think the non-impactful thing is always going to be the case until he scored or put in a blind and little assist. Now, we nearly does that on a couple of occasions. The problem with assists are slightly slippery beasts in that if the fellow then misses, you've done your bit to the best of your ability, and then, Salah's won that, and Salah doesn't even properly miss. I always feel a bit moody about posts. He hit the post. He doesn't hit the post, he hits the inside of the post. And as I said, if Salah was right-footed, struck it the same way with the same power and the same pace, it hit the inside of the post and go in. It's actually the spin, which means it doesn't, at which point then Wirtz would have an assist and everyone would feel as though there was a bit of a moment there with him linking up with Salah. And by the way, Salah would have another goal as well. I'm a little with it. I think the sort of the nature of the player that he is, it was always going to take some time. And I think that's all right in a way. As soon as it bites is when you don't win a game. And if you don't win a game and he's been asked to do something specific, then I completely understand people saying, well, what is it that he's bringing in this moment? We could do with more. When you've got that price tag around your neck, it's going to be there. He doesn't pick his own price tag, but he's earning very, very good money playing for Liverpool, let's be clear. And I'm sure he's been part of that process. So, it's going to happen that people are going to ask a few questions. And I think it's also people are going to ask a few questions by virtue of the fact that they feel as though, and this is where I think the eye test maybe does need a little bit more of a reflection. There was a lot of time last season people spent discussing Dominic Szoboszlai in that position, saying there's not enough output. Yeah. There's not enough output. Also, the other thing, as Phil said on a show yesterday, it is worth sort of remembering, Man United away aside, 6-7 games into last season, people felt like Liverpool were top, but there was a lot of Liverpool in a false position chat. They're not playing that well. And it turned as September moved into October. It turned as we got the other side of that October international break. Liverpool play, I think, some of their best football of the season last year after the October international break, all the way into the running into Christmas. That's when they also build the lead up at the top of the table. So there's just a few moving parts, some of which are to do with Wirtz, and I think he could do with doing a little bit more, some of which aren't, some of which are a halfway house. There's maybe bits of them working on his fitness, but then I think that's led to him being subbed at difficult times when I think he's been actually playing quite well. So I think all of this has made it a little bit difficult, and it's perfectly reasonable for people to want to talk about it. It's reasonable for us to want to talk about it.
Yeah, I want to come on to the substitute and the roles thing, but I want to ask you first, Keo, because you were at Palace on the Saturday, so you're someone who can speak sort of directly to the most recent eye test that we've seen. Did it look like he was sort of hindering Liverpool or more just suffering from an all-round performance? The reason I'm asking that is because, TV cameras only pick up so much. You'd have been able to see more of what he was doing off the ball there.
I don't think he was much worse than anybody else.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean by that. I don't think Liverpool were great at the weekend. I still see moments with him. There was a moment where the ball dropped out the air and he just took it round Wharton with a touch. I've seen this right from pre-season. He's quite clearly got quality. I'm not going to lie, I think he could be playing better. Yeah. I think everyone can see he could be playing better, but I don't think it stops with Wirtz. I think that stops with a lot of Liverpool players. Just touch on what Neil said there, I can see similarities to last season, and that result at the weekend in Nottingham Forest. Feels exactly like the Nottingham Forest one last year, where if Liverpool weren't playing well, there was a bit of a sort of, should they be top? But then they got beat. The manager really didn't like it, which you could see he was like that after the game at the weekend, and we sorted it out. I'm not sitting here worried about Wirtz at all. I can see the quality. I do think that we can get more from him. I do think we will get more from him, but I also think that to get the best out of it, the rest of the players need to start playing a little bit better as well.
Yeah, and when you saw that team sheet drop and you see him coming off the left-hand side, did you have any sort of concerns about that, or did you think that's, it's fine because we need to find a way to get him into the team?
Fine with that. I mean, a lot of people have talked about him on the left-hand side at Leverkusen. I mean, I didn't watch him loads at Leverkusen, but I know he was really effective from the left-hand side out there. When we were in for... when we were signing strikers in the summer, there was talk about him playing on the left-hand side. I think his best position is in the 10, is in the midfield. But he's quite clearly got the qualities to play in a number of positions.
Yeah, and Jay, we've seen Slot simplify the roles of a couple of the players that we knew before. You think back to last season with Trent and Gakpo in particular to get more out of them. But Wirtz is sort of being moved around a little bit. He feels like the one who is at the moment. And do you think that's a sort of an attempt to find a home for him, or do you think it's more like we're trying to get the best out of him rather than sort of find the home?
I think there's probably a little element of wanting to try and find what's his role in the team. Less his home where he plays, but what's his job to do in that team. Because I think we'd all think of him as the playmaker, but Liverpool don't play like that. And we've got other players, and I think early on in the season we struggled because we were trying to play everything at a million miles an hour. But Wirtz is a player you want on the ball, you want him kind of thing. So Liverpool's instinct previously was you get it forward fast and you give it to Mo Salah, you give it to Diaz, you give it to the players out wide, you play it into the middle, you spin off them. Well, Wirtz can do that. Evidently, I imagine, his first time passes for touch, he can do all of that. But I want him on the ball. I want him picking the ball up on the halfway line sometimes and gliding 15, 20 yards and making a defender make a choice. Do I come to you or do I sit? No, and well, if I come to you, you're into Salah, you're into Ekatike, you're into Isaac, you're into Gakpo. And if I don't, you're going to run with it and still get to the edge of the box and do that or score a goal. So I think we've got to find a role for him to do that. I think we should try him in different positions. So I thought this at Atletico, for example, we moved him out wide for a little bit before we brought Ingham on. I'd have liked to have seen us leave him on the pitch, bring Ingham on and take someone else off and leave him on the pitch. Because I also think there's an element of just minutes. Just keep playing him. The games looked a little bit too, I wouldn't say too fast for him, but he's just not found his footing in the game sometimes because he doesn't have that time, and when he then does have the time, he maybe thinks he doesn't. So it's just a little bit of waiting and seeing with him. So I want to see us try him in different things. I'd like to see us maybe try and change the formation sometimes in a game if you're going to do that. So if you're going to do 10 minutes, do you go more 4-2-3-1? Do you go more 4-4-2 almost thing and just put him in? Where's a space where you just get in doing 10-15 minutes? Because I think that'll bring confidence. The thing I think has been mentioned though here as well, I think there's an element of the players aren't switched onto him yet. We haven't had a player doing that.
Yep.
For bar Thiago, and there was times when the players weren't looking for his passes, they weren't looking for those things for him because he doesn't do it. And the only thing that comes to mind, just not to compare him in terms of talent, but I remember when Ross Barkley burst onto the scene at Everton, there were loads of it. I remember having this conversation with a mate and it reminded me about Wirtz the other day. People were like berating Barkley, and I remember saying, I don't think the problem was Ross Barkley in your team, I think it's that the other players, and this isn't the case in the Liverpool, but weren't good enough. Weren't good enough to play. They weren't making the run 5 yards in advance. They wanted it into feet. And I think we've got players who want it into feet and Wirtz wants to put it in behind sometimes. He's probably caught himself on a little bit of that. So it's going to take those 10 games to suddenly get used to it.
I think there is a bit of a tactical thing, Josh, but I think there's a bit of a tactical... Like, I think at the minute, let's be clear, Liverpool have played now that the manager's now had... That's his fourth game against Palace. Liverpool batter Palace for the hour of his first game. Go back to last season around October for the first hour. Then they bring Will Hughes on. The goalkeeper gets injured and we're hanging on towards the end. Yeah. And apart from that first hour, you'd argue we've come off worse every single time. So I think it comes into this one at the weekend. The manager thinks, if anything, I think he's almost overthinking. I think he wants to come up with a specific plan to do something about Palace. And I understand that because, they're 17 unbeaten as well. So he's trying to work something out. And in the end, it's Wirtz that he chooses to move, but then wants to give him license to come and get involved. And so one of your problems is if you're a footballer and someone's saying, well, you've got license to do X, you've then got to go and do it. Yeah. But this comes back to the other player points as well. We know... To Jay's point, some people say the manager plays 4-2-3-1, and whenever they do the graphic at the minute, they turn it into 4-2-3-1. But we know Salah plays the furthest forward. Yeah. We also know Salah has the least responsibility in terms of the defensive work that gets done, the work off the ball. But at the minute, Salah's not quite where you want him to be either. So you're in this situation where you're saying, well, Wirtz has got licence and Salah's got the least responsibility. And you like more output from both. Well, yeah, no surprise. But then you can go through a couple of the others so far this season and point out, other problems that are going on with players who were here last season as well. And I just think I think allowing for that that'll just take a teeny bit of time to unknot itself, I think. And games would be good. But then I think the other part of this you know, and Jay makes the point about leaving him on against Atletico. Listen, the manager gets so much data about fitness and sports science that we wouldn't even understand the report. I suspect if they were put in front of us. Let's be clear.
Smallest those little
Smallest my little graphics that I've printed off badly there. Yeah, honestly.
Be looking at going, what's that?
Yeah. But what I reckon though you'd end up saying is that at the minute we want to build his fitness up, so this is what we want to do. Yeah. But there's a football thing here, which is I think on a few of the times he's been substituted, it's just the point where I've felt, oh Christ, Wirtz is involved. Yeah. The point where I've gone, he now knows where everyone is. He's got the game now in his pocket, and he's began to pick things off. I think that's happening against Burnley when he goes off. I thought it was happening against Palace. I thought he was increasingly influential. Arsenal, now the manager says after Arsenal he's got cramp in places he didn't even know he had muscles. But watching the game against Arsenal, I was thinking he's coming here. They can't live with him all of a sudden. They can't get near him. He's just began to go into areas where Zubamendi doesn't know where he is, and Rice can't find him, and he's just beginning to find it. So I think but it might be that, as I say, this is part of we're going to have 12 weeks of this, and then they're going to go, right, he's physically right now, and now we can play him the way in which we want. I think it's hard, and I think it's also hard in the context of a couple of other things, and I think that the other, like I don't want to end up sounding like I'm on anyone's back, not least because they've won 6 out of 7 games, but I feel as though for me, the biggest mystery or thing that is hard to get this team settled and playing with at the minute is McAllister. I think last year he was so important in setting the tempo. He was brilliant. You know, no one deserved the championship medal more. So let's be clear about that. But this year, I think because of that, managers love picking him. But at the minute, you're picking him, and it's like, well, he's not functioning, and then you've got Wirtz in front, and that's not quite working, and you're like more out of Salah.
He's almost doing the opposite to Wirtz in games, where I think Wirtz keeps growing into games, and his influence grows in games, and McAllister looks like a fella whose legs are heavy, and the longer a game goes on, the more he sort of falls out of it almost.
Doesn't look fit, does he?
No, that's what I think.
I think that, and I also just think there's the sense which people keep talking about, like kind of Jota in the summer, but I just think Liverpool want it, and I think the manager wants Liverpool to play a very different way than what we've seen. So if you remember at the beginning of last season, we were going for this manager much more contained, composed, and he switches that a little bit around like that kind of autumn, winter time. He switches it a little bit, and we kind of do a bit of hybrid, not a hybrid club thing, but he's a bit more like, you've got to get the ball forward faster. Yeah. This season, the first 2 games, it felt like we wanted to do everything at 1,000,000 miles an hour. One touch,
get
pass,
the job
one
done
touch.
quick.
Yeah, it was one touch. Like, you don't take a second touch. It was like training, it was like rondos, it was move the ball faster, it was like, that's a bit too. Then we paired it back and we found, I think, the nice blend against Arsenal. Atletico the same, we found a good blend for it. You know, we switch off a little bit. I wonder how much to which is like, this is the players actually just figuring out what the manager really wants. Yeah. That they're in training and trying to take on a lot of stuff, and if you're a Wirtz or a McAllister, they probably are maybe sitting thinking, well, this doesn't suit me to like get the best out of me. So maybe got McAllister thinking, well, it's not getting the most out of me right now, and he's trying to accommodate Wirtz and maybe not getting the most out of him, and Salah, and I wonder if there's some difficult decisions that you might see him have to make where it's just like some players who you might want on the pitch. If you had to name your best 11, you're saying McAllister, but you're saying Szoboszlai, and you're saying you want Wirtz. So it's probably Gakpo who loses out if you had to write your 11 you'd love on the pitch, but it doesn't work as a team. So I think there's kind of going to have to be some difficult choices in a way that we, you know, if Isaac Ekitike is a question to answer, I think there's other parts of the team, what you want from your midfield, so attacking midfield, is a question we haven't quite figured out yet. And if we figure it out, we'll look brilliant, but there's a little bit, that's why we don't quite know what each is meant to be doing, I think.
I think it's a great point you make there, which sort of like almost speaks to the verticality, because I think it's where Pep Lijnders sort of used to make a little bit of a rod for his own back in terms of the way he interpreted verticality and the way people then did, because I think Pep Lijnders' style of verticality was really, really risky. It was so risky because it was sort of hero balls. It was a lot of hero balls. It was big switches. It was switches in unorthodox positions, like Trent doing ones along the floor and Verge doing ones along the floor, and they're the sort of ones that if the other team's got a quick
if you're not
player
like that much, you can
exactly.
be nicked off your
and then suddenly you are on the back foot, and I think it's interesting that Jay says there, because it's something I've thought about a lot, is that you've gone from almost that verticality of passing really to what I think Slot wants is verticality of positioning, where it's the passes are meant to be sort of short and more contained, but every time you pass you're meant to move forward. And I think it's why he wants quick players, in particular quick fullbacks, is almost the idea that Liverpool's shape is just meant to like swarm teams from the outside as everybody moves forward at pace. And I'm really interested to see what your little stats, Neil, say to be honest, because your little stats there, because like I keep thinking about Wirtz sort of in that same mould, where I'm thinking that the thing that I think Slot will be most impressed by him so far, and what he will have wanted a player of his profile to do, is sort of almost be that verticality of positioning, where every time he gets the ball, he's he's looking to release it?
I think on the little stats, I think that you've got and you can see the slides if you're watching this as a video. I'm not going to hold the little stats up, but I've got him last season.
You wouldn't be able to see them.
I've got him last time to zoom in, George. I've got him last season in the Bundesliga and sort of what he was doing, and you get to see within there, there's unbelievable performance around, how he dribbles and carries. In there as well, unbelievable performance on the shots that he manages to get away, how often he's in the penalty area, his involvement in sort of creating opportunities, that's there as well. But there's the work rate. So you get that last season in the Bundesliga and you can see the league average as well. So you move from that one and you can see the league average. Then what I've got him this season up against the league average. In fact, we'll do Szoboszlai first, up against Szoboszlai last season. And what's the same? Where he matches Szoboszlai last season is in the work rate. So whilst he doesn't look, he's not 6'3" with gorgeous flowing hair.
He's covering some ground though.
But he's covering some ground. And so, the pressures and the pressure he gains, all of those little bits are exactly the same under Wirtz as they are under Szoboszlai. The radar's moving the same way. And Szoboszlai actually, ironically, by the end of last season, is actually a little bit more creative in comparison to what we've seen from Wirtz so far. And then you see him this season up against the league average for the position. And again, you're seeing tons of work rate. He's actually doing all right as well for touches in the box, but loads and loads of work rate in there as well. And you can see that all the way through, with the pressures and with it being possession adjusted and all of that. You can see he's grafting as much as anyone, and Liverpool winning the ball back off the back of it as well. And he's not losing the ball that often. He's quite low on turnovers too. And then if you compare him last season, though, and I think this is what Liverpool have bought to Szoboszlai last season, that's the one where obviously it pops in that you still see the work rate. But what you do also see is he lost the ball more. Playing last season for Leverkusen. He'd lose the ball more, but he was creating more, he was carrying it more, he was going at people more, he was working just as hard, and he was working almost as hard as Szoboszlai last season, out of possession. But he was just more involved in the final third. And I think that this is still again, back to the way the games have gone around him. I think there's a little bit of a thing here where he hasn't had the luxury of that much comfort in matches. He hasn't had the luxury of his 15 minutes where you can try some stuff. All these games have been on top. And I think that the other part of this, we talk about, and listen, it's the league. The league at the minute, the level of it's unbelievable. But he plays at the weekend, up against, you mentioned Wharton before, but there's lots of people who think Wharton's an £80 million midfielder himself. That was that weekend. Weekend before is against Everton, and we know how aggressive and determined Idrissa Gueye is. All right, game before is Burnley, and that's maybe the one where you'd wanted to see, let's see this creative spark because you're going to have the time. Game before, that's Arsenal, Zubamendi, Rice, they're trying to smother you and get on top of you. A game before, that's Newcastle, where, everyone praises Tonali, Guimaraes, Joel Linton. You get no change out of them, and even though they went down to 10. And then the game before, that's Bournemouth, that's the first game. Fucking hell. Bournemouth in midfield, Tyler Adams will just, he'll keep you.
He was so physical against them as well.
Yeah.
And so I think, but the point about this is, though, this sounds like I'm making excuses, and maybe I am to a slight extent. But firstly, Arne Slot won't be, and secondly, the lads come to the Premier League to play against Premier League midfielders. So you've got to work this stuff out. Yeah, it's coming where you've got to work this stuff out. Liverpool, next weekend, he might be suspended, but if not, we're up against Caicedo, who I think's been the best midfielder who is Ryan Gravenberch in the country this calendar year. I think he's been phenomenal, and that's the next one that Wirtz is going to have to play against. But it is different. It is a step up, and that'll just take a little bit of time as well. But Liverpool have bought him for 5 seasons. But the best way you work this out is you play him, and I'd just play him through the middle of the pitch. And I think the other thing I'd be looking to do, certainly next couple of games, is have genuine continuity in terms of who's around him. Because the other thing that's been happening is other players have been in and out. I'd have I think Liverpool should be as close as they can to 2 very similar 11s between Galatasaray and Chelsea, with Wirtz in the middle of them, and almost say, right, you're going to get 60 with these lads there, you'll be getting at least 60 with these lads against Chelsea, and this is the way in which it's going to go. But that's just me. The manager might have other ideas.
I think there's something that we can't read the data on as well, and it's his confidence. I think last year he was so high on confidence, being the best player in the side, really enjoying his football, achieve what he wanted to achieve, and he's come and had a really, really tough start against some really physical opponents. There's been a couple of times, was it the Everton game where it dropped to him at the cop end and he should have shot, and he didn't shoot. Yeah. And there's another one last week where he stopped and turns in, the defender gets there early. I think there's room above him confidence-wise, and I think one thing we're seeing from the data here is his work rate. He's putting it in, but he's not trying things I think he can actually do. And I think that will come the more the team gels, the more confidence he gets, the more, whether it's more points gap we have in front of people, whatever it may be, I think as the season goes on, he'll find himself a lot more. And when he gets the confidence, you start to see him try shots from outside the box, more cute passes, little dinks over the top, etc., which we know he's got in his locker. But at the minute, what he seems to be doing most is working to make sure that even though the goals or the assists may not be there, there's no flies on him.
Your example there was a couple. It was against Arsenal, one of them, you might have done against Atletico as well. The ball gets cut back, he's in and around the 6-yard box, and he tries to take a touch, which, if he's high on confidence and comes off, he sends the defender for the echo and just rolls into the net. And then he doesn't, and he gets tackled, and you're like, lad just hit that there.
Which, by the way, Szoboszlai did so much last season as well.
So the similarities, now that Neil showed them stats, it's it is sitting in my head of that. And Liverpool would have done that in previous years, but sometimes when you're low on, whether you're low on confidence, you're not quite on form, sometimes just hit that. And then the one where we scored, it was offside, he does just hit that first time. He doesn't try to take the touch, he just hits the ball. The ball's in front of you, just hits it. So there's a few where, with margins, you say, whether it's trying to, playing a pass to someone and they hit the post or don't score, there's little margins there where you think a little bit more confidence, he'll feel a bit more thing, he'll see the team. And also, the way Liverpool play and the success we've had with our attack and talent in particular, I think has been because usually one of the three has been firing. So one of the three, when you're at Salah, Mane and Firmino, Salah still gets man marked almost describe someone seen the saying, it's like he gets kettled, there's loads of them on him, you're not getting out, and it's never his fault, it's he never gets nothing for it kind of thing. But if he's on it a bit more, and when Ekatike's on it, and he's, I think maybe at the weekend, he's not as sharp as Ekatike's been, that creates space for Wirtz, because then defenders have to worry about that player. And Liverpool collectively, Wirtz is not the only player you'd look at and go, I might have wanted a little bit more, or was maybe expecting a bit more of just signings, let alone current players. So I think, is there an element he's being judged by his fee, but also by others aren't doing it, and that's impacting him. Because if Salah's occupying their full-backs more, Ekatike and Isak are bothering theirs, and Gakpo, is doing a bit more like what Diaz used to be and pushing people right back.
Different game.
Suddenly Wirtz has got loads of space in front of him, and I want him to do that 10-15 yards. I want him to see what... Look at De Bruyne at City. De Bruyne at City, when City's at the forwards and loads of attacking talent kind of occupying everyone, De Bruyne has the space then to find a pass and do something lovely. Wirtz hasn't had that yet, and that's when I think I'll really judge him, to think he's had that space 10-15 yards to run into, and does he do something with it kind of thing.
There's also something else here, which again, I think if the manager was here, one of the things he'd say is, lads, we've won 7 out of 8. Yeah. And I think that if you are, and has he been contributing, the manager, we've talked about how hard he's worked, he's contributed towards that. But I think it's that moment of when you are or aren't coming to the party. But even that's a little bit difficult in that we all are very well aware, acutely aware, too many Liverpool's parties have been happening in the last 10 minutes. And he's not been on the pitch. So it's not been that idea of, the key moments, the big moments so far have all been after he's been substituted. And I don't think there's a correlation between that. I just think that Liverpool, it's the way the games have gone.
There's a thing though as well, right, and that this is largely being about the transfer fee. If he wasn't playing for us and he'd signed for someone else for this money, we might all be sitting there saying, wasting money. Look, last season, Moises Caicedo, when Liverpool don't sign him, he doesn't have a particularly good few months, and everyone's like, look at us, we've done you there, we've got Gravenberch. And now you look at Moises Caicedo and say, he's tidy a minute. So,
and even think about Chiesa on our books as well.
You judge him in moments, don't you? And I think fans are fickle in this on all sides, and I think he's being judged by the fee, and it's he's got to expect this, and we're almost probably being defensive of him as a fan base, because we know others are attacking him because of stuff Klopp and others have previously said about £100 million players, but that's just a market for a player like this. And as Neil said before, we haven't signed him even for the next 5 years. We've signed him hopefully the next 6 or 7.
The cracks are starting to show with that a little bit, though. So there's a few groans in the ground, and there's a few comments, Jory's out, and just shut up for a minute, you know what I mean? Just shut up for a little minute.
But we're constant, the jury's constantly out. You're playing for the jury's out. Salah's just about got the jury back in.
I can't remember who I was talking to the other day. They said to me, they said there's literally a fella that's literally been on Salah's back for 2 years. I'm like,
oh mate, I've got mates.
I'm like, you're mad. And so God knows that you think of Florian Wirtz. Florian Wirtz isn't even getting into my kids under 16. if Salah's not good enough for Liverpool, mate, this is game over, isn't it? So it's like, what? And so there's an element of that. Sometimes those stats might surprise you, and I think that's that kind of bit of they're not playing great, but isn't it boss to be top? winning games, finding ways to win and not playing games. Because last season we did exactly the same thing as you say.
I think what you need, what will happen is, and it does actually happen with Szoboszlai for a period last season as we got into December. I think another good example last season is genuinely, you know, there's games where, and I know we don't like to mention them anymore, but there's games where you were thinking, fucking, I won't get much out of Trent at the minute. Yeah. And then suddenly you'd need something, Newcastle away being an example, and he'd be great. Brentford away, an example. Leicester, where suddenly, bang, there he is, and you're like, yeah, that's why Real Madrid want to get you on a free, is because of this. And, you know, I think that's a key part of this, and there'll be some sort of point where, you know, I think with him, there'll be an opportunity for it to go up a notch. Now, whether or not it goes up a notch, that's down to him, that's down to the manager. I'm not saying it'll definitely happen. And I think Caicedo was actually an interesting comparison, because it is 6 months where everyone's saying you've wasted some money on him. And it's still happening to an extent with Fernandes as well, who they also bought. But the two of them, to me, look a really good midfield now. Now, are they worth, is it 230 million worth of a starting pair of a midfield? I don't know. Yeah. But they look, but you can see now what it is that they've ended up being. But I think that because of this, you know, you instinctively, because of the price tag and because, you know, we were all so excited about him, and because you can see these moments of quality, there is a little bit of a thing where you're all a bit like, come on lad, we'd love to have 10 goals and 10 assists by Christmas. That's the plan here. Yeah. But it may just take sort of a teeny little bit of time. But again, I just sort of think Liverpool have shown they've got an ability to score 3 goals in a game. It'd be quite nice if those 3 goals came in the first hour when Wirtz is on the pitch, because you'll end up being involved in one of them.
Honestly, a third goal in the first hour at the moment would hit so hard.
God, it'd
be so lovely.
It'd feel like Dream Street, wouldn't it?
Everyone's sitting there saying 3 goals in
an hour, in the first hour, not the second hour.
This feels unsafe.
All these football matches that go on forever as well. We're very good in the second hour these days, not even the second half. I think there's just little bits. I think with him, I think that's got to come. But for me, it's continuity. And I think continuity will help. And then I think, you know, I think you shift from there. The other part of this is, it is the most, I think there's a bit of a mythology. I think every team now, with the odd exception, arguably our opponents at the weekend just gone are a rare exception, but I think almost every team now spends a lot of its time being a team in transition. I don't think you can do the thing anymore where you're acting as though, well, you know, I think Liverpool are trying to do it at the minute where they're going to have a big 18 months of transition. I think the window just gone, and the 2 that follow it, I think are going to be, you know, I think this January, I think Liverpool will do more. And then next summer, I think Liverpool will do more. And then I think Liverpool will try to have, and now we sit tight with this manager, with this group of players broadly for 3, 4, 5 years. And it might be that 1 or 2 go because the time's right. And one or two are added. But on the whole, the nucleus is here. But you spend a lot, like Arsenal are still a team in transition. They brought in who they brought in over the summer. They brought in Madueke. They're getting Saka back to fitness. They're working out what to do with Eze. They're working out where Zubimendi clicks in with Rice. They're working that out before your very eyes at the minute. Man City are a team in transition. I think we are just in this situation where we are, but part of why we are as transitional as we are is part of buying Wirtz and putting all this money on Isak and Ekitike is having the answer to what happens when Salah goes.
Yeah, I don't think it's a now. I don't think what you're saying there about the thing, I don't think these are now players. I think this for next year. I see a situation in which Liverpool next summer, I don't even know if next summer they'll do as much as you're saying. I think they'll do some, they'll buy future players, but I could easily see a situation.
I think because the World Cup will be the same. I think January they'll go try and get Gay done and maybe 1 or 2 others, and then assess 1 or 2 in the summer, try and get it done before.
I would be surprised if we sell more than we'll buy next summer. I think the players, and that's the element of like, we're judging it in 90 minutes, aren't we? Because we want to win. And this is the other thing where this skewed, isn't it? Like, this had just been a conversation about not settling. Now we're worried, if he doesn't hit form soon, can we really go for the league? I'm like, it's 6 games in, let's calm down.
I'm a top.
Yeah. Because it's the fine margins now, isn't it? And like, football does this now. Caicedo shit was written off. Managers are written off quickly. You know, Graham Potter had, you know, the backing of the board on Thursday night, Friday morning.
Yeah. Does a pre-match press conference?
There's a pre-match conference. There wasn't the manager. Like the
few face swaps on the internet.
The speed in which things happen is like
Palace last season didn't win any of the first 9, and now they're 17 unbeaten. I'm saying 18. Sorry, the second league, and he's won the FA Cup, and everyone's saying he's brilliant because he is. But last season, when we went there in October, they hadn't won. We win 1-0. They put the battle and performance in the second half, Palace, and they go to where they go. It's, you know, these things are a little bit of a process. And I'll say again, that game against Palace last season, we win, but we're not all coming out going, I'll tell you what, we've just watched the champions there. We're saying it's a really good first hour, but we needed, but the other thing that we're saying at that point as well is, could we take a couple more of these chances, lads, if you don't mind?
We needed some goals there, because we can't be relying off Harvey Elliott to come off the bench and score late.
Yeah.
So, know, there's some parallels to this, but also that's just football sometimes as well, isn't it? Like,
yeah, I think it's, but I think it's all right for people, as I say, to be a little bit like, because it's a change. He looks like a change, and he is a bit of a change. But I don't think, for instance, I think if you went back to you were very, very similar to the way we were playing last season. You know, I think that the issue you'd have is, you know, you just don't pick him, and somehow you bring Diaz back. I think that the issue that you'd have, that you were looking at, all of a sudden would be, well, McAllister just doesn't look fit. McAllister just doesn't look fit.
And also, they're just very different midfielders. I think there's a thing in some of our supporters' minds, you know, I know there's no doubt fall into it as well, is like, I think we're used to that three midfield of like, the lots of industry, there's lots of running, they make the rest of it work, but I don't think we look at them and think, flair. Because Thiago's the exception to that. We don't look at them and think flair. And I think even with like Gravenberch, what you see with Gravenberch compared to Fabinho is like, he wants to get the ball and he wants to run forward with it. So Bosley does lots of running, that's why we're critical of his end product, because he's much further forward and faster and quicker than we've seen in that three previously last season when he's running around for Liverpool. This season we're seeing a bit more from him where he's like creating stuff, he's starting things off. Wirtz is different. Wirtz is not that midfielder. He runs like James Milner, he's built like James Milner. Yeah. But he's flair. He's not a... We used to have a three-man workhorse midfield was the kind of thing, and now we're kind of... He wants something different. We're almost like watching Slot's team and Wirtz and others do the same thing. It's like we're trying to... City are going back to like what Liverpool did, and it looks like we're trying to go and do what City did. Yeah. There's a switch, and someone's going to be right or wrong. There's an element to me that not just hopes, but thinks, I reckon City have threw the kitchen sink at this, and they might have got this wrong, even though they're winning games and still good. It's like... this doesn't feel like a plan for the future. This feels like a quick fix,
try and
win before you leave, Guardiola type of thing. When I think Slot's trying to teach the system to be dominant for 3 or 4 years rather than just win the league this season, which is what we did last year. We tweaked little bits. This is a future project, which is going to take time. But
we think about the way Liverpool have played and had success in recent years. Full-backs have been key. The midfield three have been key.
Can we change them all?
Change them all. Yeah. And change the manager. I know we're champions, but like this is a... Yeah,
he's only had one season. If Liverpool didn't win the league last season, would we be sitting here 12 months? We'd probably be saying now, oh, he's had his window now. He's had his own full window. He's had a year to plan for this. We'd be saying, give him time. Like, not that I'm not saying the manager's but do you know what I mean? We'd be judging these signings in a different context. If Liverpool got thereabouts to leave, we're like, oh, signed, well, built on last season, we're still top again. Sign more, these will come good. Look at last season where we were thereabouts, happy days, we'll go one better. So, like, what's our... I suppose the question I ask myself, and it's not on the head of this, but of Wirtz, and it might be at the team, what's our measure of success? Is it 10 goals, 10 assists? Well, it'd have been naive to think that by Christmas, but if he does 10 and 10 by next April, we'll all be sitting there and we're thereabouts to the league and Champions League, we'd be like, sound this, no one remember Palace.
And then also we all have the idea of, and if you can kick on now, because we're in the running and we need, this is the point and this is what we've got him in for. We've got him in for your big Champions League quarter final. This is where we need him to come and produce the goods. This is where we think, this is also the stage, this is why he's come to us, by the way. Yeah. This is the stage he wants to be raised up onto. Yeah. We've got him in for the running as well, but I think that's the case for a few of them. I just think I think it's a difficult point in the season, and I think it is a shame he hasn't got himself a goal. He hasn't got himself a moment yet. I think it is a bit of a shame. I think it is a bit of a problem, because a problem overstates it, but I think what you just sort of want to feel is he's on the road towards settling just a little bit quicker. Ekitike at the minute, despite the madness of the yellow card, which still, by the way, is...
I was angry about it at full time of Palace. Yeah. It was a full time of
Southampton. I was.
You're still, that's still in your mind, but we've got to follow the philosophy of the manager, which is that we allow people to make mistakes at this football club. He says, sticking in his career.
Feels very noble of you, Neil, because I'm not sure I believe you right now.
I'd have fined him today if it was me from the manager. No, we don't really do the fines. Yeah. 100 grand.
I'll tell you what, I'd have him just running today. Running to Turkey. We're getting a nice flight.
You're right.
You're making your own way.
For everyone 14, Zach's face was shocked at half time when he was running laps. Then went so.
But you've got, I think it would be, it'd be good if there was one moment at the minute, and let's say he took. And I think, by the way, he plays well in the Community Shield. But let's say, the goal that Ekitike gets now, that was Wirtz's finish. That was him. And Ekatiké's then got other moments which feel great. Wirtz has got that one. Everyone would just be a little bit more like, it's going to settle. I just think, again, though, I don't think the manager has his best day on Saturday in a number of ways. I think in the run-up to it, and I'll say, I think they're a bit in his head because he's not got results against them. He's not got performances against them. So I think they are a bit in his head. And I think I don't want to say overthinking because you sound like a prick. I don't like when people it's his job to think. I want him to think. I want him to think loads. So it's not overthinking. I just think he goes for something and it just doesn't quite come off. He changes it at half time. We're much better second half. He gets most of the subs right, and then I think moving to Bosley was just a bit of an error at that point, but I understand why he does it. I don't think it's that mad. But I think what doesn't help there is your action of moving Wirtz as part of that doesn't help them. It doesn't help that it's him who ends up feeling a bit like, well, he's not been anywhere near as involved as you'd like. When Isak wasn't as involved as I'd like, Salah wasn't as involved as I'd like at all. But because you're able to look at Isak and go, well, I've seen him be brilliant for Newcastle. You're able to look at Salah and go, there might be a little concern about whether or not he's lost a teeny bit more pace. But we've seen everything that he's done. Yeah. With Wirtz, there's still a little bit of, what precisely do we think that this is? And I think that the manager, as I say, I'm not saying build it round him for the next couple of games. I just think that one of the reasons that gets us to the party last season in the way it does is we've just got loads of continuity in selection and then in performance. And I just think for the next two, because we want to get out of this run of games, I think I'd have continuity, and for me the fall guy would be McAllister more than it'd be Wirtz. I'd be picking Wirtz, I'd be picking Salah.
I think they're two different problems as well. I think McAllister needs more minutes in his legs.
Stuff like that. Yeah. So, but here's the thing, right? You look back to that eye test thing, and this is because I think, the lads are not be great, and there's reasons why they're not what you want to see or have seen previously, Salah. But if you said to an impartial person on the eye test of the Liverpool games, who's your sub after 70, I think there's a lot more people who would say it's Salah rather than it's Wirtz. I think Wirtz also suffers from, he has got someone you can change him for.
Yeah.
There's no one to change on that side. I think if Wirtz could play on that right, you might have seen him sometimes do Salah. Because he's done Salah before, and Klopp's done Salah when he felt he needed to, so you'd do that, but there's no one there to do him. There's no one you can put on that side. There's no Diaz to swap. So there's an element of if it's purely on the eye test, he's being judged unfairly, but it's also circumstantial just in where he plays in the position of the changes Liverpool have available to them.
Yeah, but I mean, he could, I think, and he might end up doing Frimpong there during AFCON.
Chiesa is the one I thought there's genuinely an optical thing of if you take Salah off and bring Chiesa on.
And also if you don't win. So, the game can go, if you took Salah off at the weekend and the game went exactly the same way, and Chiesa equalises, haven't come on for Salah, even allowing for that, if you don't have a shot for 11 minutes and they score in the 98th minute, everyone's saying, well, that's why you keep Salah on.
Yeah. We would have won that game.
If Salah stays on, it's Salah who, for instance, lays on, it's a brilliant dummy from Szoboszlai as well, but it's Salah who lays on Ingamoa at Newcastle.
Scores the pen at Burnley.
Scores the pen at Burnley. I think you can end.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You can end up driving.
But it's that eye test versus what actually happens in games is a different judge.
And managers want to make changes. Yeah. You want to feel as though you're going to make a change and you're going to contribute.
Well, that also gives other teams stuff to think about. I think the thing Slot's done really well is he's made other teams think.
Yeah.
You say about him overthinking. He does this with Jones. The thing that changes against Arsenal is Arsenal don't know how to react to Liverpool changing their formation because they put Jones in a different place.
Yeah.
That made loads of space, and we were cancelling each other out. We had Gravenberch had to play like third centre half. They had Rice doing it. We bring Jones on, get him to do something different, and Arsenal don't know how to react for a little while.
The other now, to do a tactical thing on it, the one I would like to see be selected next couple of games is Jones. I think Jones makes players better around him, and I think if you want to think about how to get a bit more out of Wirtz, but not just Wirtz, I think if you want to think about how to get a bit more out of Kerkez progressively, I think that at his best, McAllister's the best at it. McAllister makes every player around him at his best go up, bang. But at the minute, he just isn't doing that.
I kept saying this, what I thought McAllister was so good at last season was almost that being able to take contact and either win a foul or just break past a man. And Gravenberch's got better this season than he probably was last season. But I think when you do look heavy-legged, and as Keo said before, you probably look a bit unfit. Suddenly that looks like it's the weight of the world. Is someone smashing into you?
It was Flamini wearing an Arsenal. They kind of, being not very nicely described as the water carrier. But that's a bit of... He does all that kind of unseen graft sometimes. McAllister, and Jones does it for people in a way that doesn't get appreciated.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Jones is doing that really well this season.
But I think this comes to the formation question, though. Even if you make those changes, where does that leave Wirtz? So that is because if you bring Jones in, you're not dropping Gravenberch. What are you doing with Szoboszlai? Because where are you putting Wirtz? Then this is the problem of this kind of
Next
This is why Szoboszlai goes right back.
I think to do Szoboszlai right back for a little bit.
I think his performance are better.
But I think it's also that question of what he wants Gakpo to do, because I think he's got to give him a very deliberate role in the team. But you're not playing either Ekitike or Isak. He's got a problem at some point of which one of them he's going to play. So I think you're not playing Salah. You're actually, there's only so many spaces for Wirtz.
Where I end up at the minute is I think that Szoboszlai, isn't that, so the way we describe that midfielder who makes others around him better, I don't think Szoboszlai does that in quite the same way. I don't think he does it at all. I think Szoboszlai just plays well or he doesn't. And he's very involved or he isn't. And he does other people's work, don't get me wrong, but that's not the same as sort of knowing this is the subtle judgments of, I need to bring him into this game now. That's a good angle for him. I want to be clear, I think Szoboszlai's been absolutely brilliant this season. I think if you pick Jones at the minute, and you just go 4-2-1-3, and you let Wirtz be the one, and you say Jones sits next to Gravenberch, and then I think you're able then to get more out the left back. I think you can get Jones to get more out of Gakpo for you on the left hand side. Hope he gets more out of Wirtz for you. And I'd have Szoboszlai coming in from the right in the next two, because I just think it'll suit the nature of the two opponents. One's in Europe. I think it'll suit. And then you just get to the end of this run, and you see what you've seen. And you go, okay, right, this is what and now there's another run coming. Also, you don't know what Nick everyone comes back from international duty, and we've had that one before as well. So trying to, I think at this point, expand beyond that. I just think you go on this one, but then the other thing that you do is you pretty much, maybe one change, but you get as close to the same 11 in back-to-back games. Not just for Wirtz, but for all of them. I think they could all do, like Salah could do with having the same fella inside him. Playing up front. He could just do with knowing it's Ekitike and this is the way he makes his runs. Sound, I know where I am. Wirtz is here, feeding me, and this is when I find him. Szoboszlai's backing me up from right back. Okay, I know where I am. 2 games of that would be no bad thing for Salah. Gakpo, the same thing coming off the left, and I think it's a bit harsh on a couple. I think Chiesa has been worthy of a start, and I think you could have make a case for him at Galatasaray. But I think at the minute, the fluency question early in these matches, because games do last. Games have lasted 100 minutes for us, and it's lasted 100 minutes for us in a way that's helped us because we've scored late. But games last 100 minutes, and what that means is the first 40 minutes are important as well. Yeah. So getting that fluency a bit more, I think having a bit of continuity for the next 2. And then, and also, 5 subs now, so you can make tons of changes off the bench. You can deal with tiredness that way and get out, and then we see where we are, and then we go, okay. And I think that could... Wirtz, it's the same role, game to game. It's Curtis Jones feeding you. It's Gravenberch backing you up. It's Ekitike in front of you. Yeah, it'll be Isak off the bench in both, but it's Ekitike in front of you. For Curtis, you're doing 90 minutes running 60, McAllister's coming on. Yeah. For Ekitike, you're doing 90 minutes running 60, Isak's coming on. And then you work the rest out and you sort of have a, right, let's go for this and offer them all that. And I think that'll see you get more from Wirtz. As I say, my biggest thing at the minute is I just think that they just need a couple of games with relative normality, and the first way you get normality is by having consistency in selection. Yeah. It's the only thing the manager can influence, because the opposite, by the way, Galatasaray could be mental. Yeah. The players, they've got Mario Lemina, who was last seen in English football fighting with his own team and his own crowd. Sane's massively inconsistent, Oshiman's unreal, but we don't know if he's fit. They've got a card, he's a head case. Yeah. Like anything could happen against Galatasaray, so you can say, but all we can do is we can make our stuff normal. And I think we need maybe a bit more of making our stuff normal. Yeah,
and I'd love to go 3-0 up.
In an hour.
Yeah, there's definitely a perception thing for me here, Kieran. I'm always a bit loath to sort of talk about narcs on social media, but we should, because we've already spoke about narcs in the ground as well. So all this 007 bollocks you can fall into with football Twitter, and to be honest, even Reds who are sort of making more of the thing. Like, I'm struck by what Jay said before about the sort of money and how that sort of warps perceptions. And I think as at Liverpool, unfortunately, we're just not that used to having these expensive footballers. And in my head, I almost build this thing of like money sort of equals flair. I definitely did it with Szoboszlai when he first came, and he sort of transforms as a player over that time, and he cost double what McAllister cost. And because McAllister cost 35 million, I was prepared for him to be more workmanlike, whereas Szoboszlai, I wanted him to be smashing in free kicks from 40 yards and things like that. If Wirtz is just workmanlike, and it's just workmanlike for 6 months, as we said with the sort of Caicedo thing, and the Reds win all and sundry in that first 6 months, I'm going to be absolutely laughing, and I'm not going to be worried about perceptions.
You can make as many memes as you want about Liverpool players, but if they're sitting top of the league, I'll be laughing at you, not the other way around. Absolutely. And that's the top and bottom of it. I think what happens with big name signings is everyone wants them to fail. I mean, if you type in Isak on Twitter now, you'll see that Newcastle fans are still talking about him more than Liverpool fans at the minute.
I keep seeing that video around of him going to his haunch against Atletico. I was like, it's his first game. It was about 50 minutes into a Champions League game that was really intense.
So it won't just be Newcastle fans either, the rest of the league, Man United, City, Arsenal, we all want them to fail. and they'll all be doing the best to try and unsettle him as well by giving him hell on social media. Look, this is what goes on. I mean, I laugh at funny memes on social media, and sometimes I think...
Sometimes you tweet them out as well.
Sometimes I'm on the other end of it. You can talk.
That wouldn't get us a move as far as you.
But yeah, I don't care. I mean, I know he's played 7 games, and I know that we expected to see a little bit more. But I think that the moment is coming where he sticks one in the top corner. I think the moment is coming where the little reverse pass around the back of the defender, and Liverpool go and win a game 3-0. And look, I'm not concerned about Florian Wirtz. I'm more concerned, about can we carry on winning, and can we get the performances where we need it to be.
Yeah, absolutely, that moment is coming. In the moment Florian Wirtz lifts the Premier League trophy above his head is coming in May as well. So watch out for that, and we'll see you on the memes.